Hi, welcome to Knife Skills. So this is Chapter 5, Tools and Equipment. It's in your On Cooking book. So I also have your PowerPoint up, and you will answer questions for your forum day 1. You'll answer some questions from this chapter. All right, so here talking about tools and equipment. The importance of proper tools. So one, it's using the proper tool for the right use. Okay, I'm not going to take a paring knife and go through and fabricate a beef tenderloin when I need to be using a chef knife. So it's using the proper tools, or I'm not going to use a chef knife that's really big to cut a lemon, okay, where I'm supreming a lemon. So it's kind of understanding that using the proper tools for the right reason is what you need. Having the tools for a particular task may mean the difference between a job well done and a careless job, or incorrect or dangerous one. And what I mean by dangerous is if I have too big of a knife and I'm cutting something small, I'm going to cut my finger. All right, so you want to make sure that you're safe and you're using safety when you're choosing your tools wisely. And here you're going to start learning about the tools. You're going to start learning what tools should I use and how to use them. Because the biggest thing with a knife is, guess what? At the end of the day, you can cut your finger off. I've seen people cut chunks off of the tips of their fingers. I've done it. I've stuck a knife into my hand. I've gotten more cuts in my life than I know what to do with on my hands. So you just got to be careful. Is everybody going to cut themselves? Yes. At some point in your kitchen experience, you're going to cut yourself. Might be in Knife Skills, might be a class from now. I don't know. But everybody cuts themselves. And the distinction is, how many stitches do you need, or was it a nick? Okay. Great example. Last year I was cleaning the mandolin. A mandolin is a slicer that you can use by hand, and I was cleaning it, and the whole time I'm cleaning it, don't cut your finger, don't cut your finger. In my head, I'm going, don't cut your finger, don't cut your finger. What'd I do? Thumb went right across it. How many stitches did I get? 6. And it was last year, so, you know, it happens. The NSF International, so the NSF, it's the circle. That is your standard design and construction and installation of kitchen tools, cookware, and equipment. And so if it has that symbol on it, it means that it's for the kitchen. Now, are there things that we use that are not necessarily perfect made for kitchen? Yes. But anything that if you're looking for kitchen tools and stuff like that and equipment, you want to have the NSF label on there. Standards for tools and equipment. Tools and equipment must be easy to clean. One, it all has to get cleaned. So it doesn't matter if I'm using a slicer, a buffalo chopper, a steam jacketed kettle. I have to clean it after I'm done. I can't just let it sit there and get caked on, and it becomes worse and worse to clean. If you burn a pot, you clean a pot. You know, it's just that simple. You have to keep it clean. You have to stay organized. The contact surfaces must be non-toxic, non-absorbent, corrosive resistant, and non-reactive. Corrosion. So you don't want something that's going to absorb any kind of chemical if you're cleaning it. You know, if you have a wooden cutting board, how do you clean it? You know, most people will put it in water and use soap and water for it. But usually a real cutting board, if you're going to clean it properly, is using salt, and you're scrubbing it with salt. And usually, you know what, I'll wipe it down, but you don't go soak and put it into a soap sink. You know what I mean? And let it soak in water. The wood, it will break. It's not going to break right there, but it will start to bend and pop out and all of that. You want it to be smooth, free of pits, because the pits, what happens, it has the little particles, and food will get stuck in there. And then you have the bacteria start to grow, and all of a sudden people get sick, right? Because we talked about that in ServSafe. Cracks, crevices, ledges, rivets, Anything, you want to make sure that you're getting everything cleaned, because any kind of little food, again, you can get people sick. So you want to really be careful with cleaning of your equipment. Any kind of internal corners, edges must be round and smooth. You want it to be angles that are easy, that it's sealed. If the seal is coming off, guess what? Bacteria is getting underneath it. So equipment is huge, keeping it clean. And I firmly believe that, you know what, if you don't want to cook, if you don't want to clean, you don't want to cook. So keeping your equipment clean, cleaning your knives, cleaning your tools. I mean, it's something you have to do. I've had students before that I look in their knife kit and they're putting dirty knives into it. They just kind of wipe it down and there's still food. You really have to, because what's going to happen is the bacteria will grow in the knife kit, in that material. So, you know, you just got to keep stuff clean. Coating materials must be non-toxic and easily cleaned, and resistant to chipping and cracking. So when you're looking at your pots and pans, usually you're going to see the stainless steel or the aluminum. Now, if you put aluminum into a chemical, certain chemicals will make it real kind of epoxy, where they just become, there's little pits and stuff in it and cracks. So you got to be really, really careful with that kind of stuff. But it's shoes, and that's why you want to have the NSF label on it, so that you know that it's for kitchen equipment. It's for the kitchen. It's used. People won't get sick using it, and that you have that. Before purchasing or leasing any equipment, you should evaluate several factors. One thing you want to look at is if you buy a brand new gas stove, and usually our stoves in our kitchens are 8-burner stoves, right? And so if you buy one, they're going to cost, a brand new one, it all depends on the quality, anywhere between $3,000 to $10,000, $15,000. If you're going to open up your own restaurant and you don't have a lot of money, am I going to buy brand new equipment, or, you know what, do I want to go buy some used equipment? You can buy used equipment today that is at least half the price, a third of the price. And it's from these restaurants who they opened up, they were open a year, these people didn't know what they were doing, and now they're shut down, and they bought brand new equipment, so and equipment will last a long time if you keep it clean. If you don't keep it clean, it breaks down, it gets corroded, so it's just cleaning it is everything with equipment. But you want to make sure that you choose the proper equipment that you have. Is the equipment the most economical for the operation? Sometimes, like I've seen small mom and pop places that they don't have a grill, and if they want to do anything on the grill, they have a grill outside that they use, because the one thing that you have to realize too is in a kitchen you have to have the hood vent system, and anything that is gas or electric, whatever it is that you're cooking on, it has to be under that hood vent. So if you have a small place and you're opening up a mom and pop plate, guess what? You're not going to have a huge hood vent system. So you really have to do your menu around that. What equipment do you have? So it's looking at that. Maintenance, cleaning, repair. You need to figure out who you're going to have come and clean it. Do you have somebody who does that kind of maintenance and repairs, or do you hire somebody? You can easily hire Hobart. They'll come in. You can have different whoever your vendors are come in and clean your equipment. I mean, not clean your equipment, fix it. Because here's the thing: it's not if, it's when. It always breaks down. I'll never forget. I was in the middle of New Year's Eve. It was 8 o'clock at night, and we have 250 reservations, and we're about halfway through. And what happens? My grill dies. And guess what? I have a grilled filet with a lobster tail. So now all of a sudden, how am I cook? I'm having to cook my fillets on a flat top. You got to figure it out. It has to be done. It's not, oh, I can't do it. So it's just kind of knowing that. All right. Knives, the most important item in the toolkit. Okay, a knife is the extension of my hand and my arm. That is my knife. It's the extension of my hand and arm. That is my tool. You know, if I'm going, I don't care what kitchen I'm going to, I'm bringing my knife kit. And everybody has their own knives that they like. So there are certain knives that I really like. I like heavier handles, where some people, they like the lighter handles. But I like a heavier handle. That's how I was trained. So everybody has, you know, some people have big hands, and so they want a big handle on their knife. Some people have small hands, they want a smaller handle. Everybody's different. So everybody has their best knife, but you want to have good knives. And you guys, when you guys come to campus, we'll have your knife kits, and you'll get the Mercer knife kit that has the Mercer knives, which are a good quality knife. Now, they're kind of in the middle. Are they the high end? No. You can go buy a $250 knife if you'd like. I know people who have. They bought $400 and $500 chef knives. You can go get a knife for $10, and that's a cheap ass knife. There's some things that, you know what, cheap ass, I don't care. Some things, you know, do I need a $500 knife to do? No. My Mercer knife is perfect. My Hinkle, I like Hinkles, I like Wurstoff. Those are probably some of my favorite knives, to be honest. I've worked with some of the Japanese knives. I like them, but they're too light for me. I feel like it's gonna fling out of my hand. A good knife begins with a single piece of metal, and it's stamped, it's cut, and best of all, it's forged and tempered. So, you know, it's sit there. Think of the movies, and you sit and you see the blacksmith pounding it away, and they're getting that edge. And that's what they do. They get an edge, and they put the tang on it. So, the knife construction. So you need to know this. This will be on your quiz. You're going to need to tell me what each one is. All right. So you have the tip, which is the tip of your knife. Hold on. Knife. So you have the tip of the knife, right? And then here's your cutting edge. So your cutting edge is right here. I'm not going to put my finger on it. All right. You have the spine. The spine is right here. It's the top of the knife. Your bolster is right here. That's your bolster. It's right there. Okay. The heel is right here on your knife. The tang is that metal piece that goes through the handle. And then this one doesn't have rivets, but you would probably say these were the rivets, and then you have the little rivets. Okay? I will have a blank sheet of paper on your knife, on your quiz on the 5th, that you will have to tell me the different, the different pieces of the knife. Okay? So you need to know the construction of the knife. All right. Now, when you're looking at your knife and you want to see how sharp it is, you know what? Don't ever run your thumb or your finger up that you're gonna cut it. That's called getting stitches. No, I'm gonna take my blade and I'm gonna rub. You can see I'm just kind of rubbing very gently. I'm not digging my hand into it, and that will kind of tell me how my blade feels. And if it's dull, it's dull. Your knife is dull. If you ever have a knife and you're cutting in something and it's hard, it's dull. You got to have a sharp knife to get the job done. Dull knives cut people, okay? So you got to be very, very aware of that. So blades, they can be carbon steel, stainless steel, high carbon steel, or ceramic. I know you guys have seen the ceramic knives, and you'll see those different colored ones and all of that. I've used both the carbon steel and the stainless. The high carbon is usually, you're going to see, I think that's more your Japanese knives. So the shapes or chef's knives, you've got the French knife, and that's your chef knife. That's what you're going to see. That's what this is right here. That is your French knife. Okay. You have a boning knife, which is a thinner blade. Here we go. here's a boning knife. You can see that the blade is longer, okay, and thinner. All right, a paring knife is a smaller knife. It's probably about as long as my fingertips, okay? And it's just for doing small, like if I'm going to cut up, let's say I'm going to supreme a orange or a lemon where I'm taking off the skin, and you guys will do that. This is a Santoku, okay? This is a Santoku. It's the shape of the knife. Cleavers are going to be heavy. Usually I'm going to use a cleaver if I want to break up some bones, if I'm fabricating a chicken and I want to break my bones up. A slicer is long and thin. A butcher's knife or a scimitar. Ooh, I have one of those. It's probably about that long. It's beautiful. Oyster knives and clam knives, they help to open up the oysters. You got to be careful with those. You'll kind of pop it into your hand. I had one of my cooks once, he nicked his hand, and 3 days later, because he was a drunk and he didn't keep it clean, his hand was about 4 times as big. He had to go to the hospital. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks and almost lost his hand. So you got to be careful with these things, and Japanese knives. So there's your chef knife. You got all the pictures of these, okay? And look at them, start learning them. You know, why would I use a serrated knife? Usually I use a serrated knife to cut bread. You know, so you see the scimitar, the oysters, the clam, and there's your Japanese knives. And the Japanese knives, guess what? You're paying $250, $300 for a knife. And you know what? I have students that they go out and they'll go buy that, which is great. But if you do, keep it at home because people will steal it. I've had that happen too. So here's your sharpening device. When you guys come to school, we'll show you how to use the sharpening stone. You have a tri-stone, all right, and then you have the steel. Now, the tri-stone is what you use to sharpen the edge of the knife. So as I said, if your knife is dull, right? So I'm going to use my tri-stone to get a new edge on it. The steel is where it hones it, because what it does is it will start to break kind of, there will be little particles because you're rubbing it on a stone, and so it'll start breaking up those particles. So it will kind of clean it and make it smooth is what your steel does. It hones that knife, it hones the blade, if you will. All right, hand tools. So here you have your fork. Usually I have that fork where I'll hold it, and whenever I'm carving, you have a peeler, you have a zester, a meat mallet. Those are great. You have the spatula, which is a straight spatula, or you have the grill spatula. So usually the straight one you're going to use more in bacon and pastry, and the grill spatula I'm using in a savory kitchen. And then you have your whisk. Usually you'll have a balloon whisk, which is a bigger head on it than the other. Okay. Scales, you have you have a digital scale or a weighted scale. You have your volume measurements, which is your ladles, your portioning cups, your measuring cups. So anytime I'm using a scale, I want to see what the weight is. Now, can I do the weight of water? Yes, I can weigh water, and 8 ounces of water is going to measure the same in a measuring cup of 8 ounces. Okay, but if I do flour and I put 8 ounces of flour on a scale and I do 8 ounces in a measuring cup, which would be 1 cup, they're 2 different, flour is heavier. So please know that volume and weight are 2 different measuring tools, okay, that you have to use. So know that. Other volume measures, you've got your tablespoons, you got your little portion measuring spoons, you have your portion scoops, and usually you'll see the portion scoops will be used. Great example if I'm making cookies and I want every cookie to be a 2-ounce portion or a 4-ounce portion, I'm going to use a portion scoop. You have the measuring cups, and then you have the ladles. And ladles, I can get a 2-ounce ladle, a 1-ounce ladle, a 20-ounce ladle, 8 ounces, however much I want. And you'll see different sizes in kitchens, okay? The thermometers, that's going to come in your knife kit. and that is your instant read, where it will, you'll carry it in your arm right here. And that's what you check, is my chicken cooked to 165 degrees? Is my beef at 110? So I'm going to get a medium rare. It tells you the temperatures, okay? Calibrating, usually there's two ways to calibrate your thermometer. So one, you can either put it in water and ice. So you take ice and put water in it, and the ice water will drop it. It should be dropped to 32 degrees, but you want to have a full cup of ice. It's not just having a little bit of ice, it's your full cup of ice, fill it with water, you put it in, and it will usually drop to 32. And if your thermometer does not have, let's say it goes to 30, you can move it to 32. The other way is the boiling method, where you get a boiling pot of water, and what's boiling? 212, right? So I don't like it, because guess what? If it boils up and hits my hand, I get burnt. Don't like that. So you don't really see a lot of chefs use the boiling method. We usually use the ice water, okay? Metal and heat conduction. So you have your copper, your aluminum, your stainless steel, your cast iron, and your carbon. Now, I will tell you, your copper will get hot. Copper is a little thinner and it will get hot. I've been in copper kitchens, with French chefs, and that's what they like. They like a good copper pot. Aluminum pots, so usually the difference, the copper and the aluminum are a thinner metal, where your stainless steel is a little thicker, okay? And the stainless steel, you'll see that today, that's your shiny pots. The cast iron, people love the cast iron, especially grandma and grandpa. They had their cast iron skillets that they used. They did all their cooking in. The one thing that a cast iron skillet does is that it holds that temperature of heat. Even if the heat goes away, it still holds that temperature. And it's even because it's thick cast iron, okay? So you'll have that. Other cook materials, so you have glass, ceramic, if you've ever seen like a ceramic bowl or anything like that, plastic, enamelware, the silicone. The silicone is the new kind of the rubber plastic that you can do muffins in. It easily kind of pops things out, and they're nice to have. I have some silicone muffin tins, especially smaller ones, whenever I want to do anything petite I like. And then the non-stick coating, you get a non-stick coating pan. Usually I'm going to use a non-stick coating especially if I'm using a saute pan, that's going to be for my eggs. Common cookware, so here you have your range tops and your pots. So if you go from, we'll do the stock pot with the spigot, that's your big pot in the middle. You have the sautoir pot, and that is straight-sided. It's a straight-sided pot. And then you have your sauteuse. Your sauteuse is a slope-sided, and usually I'm using my sauteuse to flip things if I want to flip things out. If I want to just get a nice sear on something, I'm going to usually use the straight-sided. And then you have the rondeau brazier, and that's usually a bigger pot. If I'm going to make, let's say I want to make like 2 gallons of something, I'll use my rondeau. Or I want to braise a pot because it has a large surface area, okay? But they're great to use. Then you have your strainers and your sieves. You have your colander. Everybody knows the basic colander strainer. And then you have, if right underneath that colander, you have your chinois, okay? Chinois, and what that is, it's a finer mesh. So if I want to strain something and I want to make sure that I get all the pulp out of it, I'm going to use a chinois, okay? Because it's fine. And then you have the drum, that's your tammy. Usually we'll call it a tammy. If you'll see it used more in baking and pastry, I've seen it used, where if I want to sift a lot of flour or something like that. So, but I've used it in garde manger too, and I'll talk about that when you guys get there. Processing equipment, you've got a slicer, the mandolin. So the slicer, let's say I have a deli, I got deli meat, I'm going to slice it on the slicer, right? Mandolin, the food chopper or the buffalo chopper, food processor. Food processor, love it. We call it a Roboku here in the kitchen. You have the blender. You have an immersion blender. An immersion blender is a stick blender. It's one of my favorite tools in the kitchen. Why? Because I literally can take this and I put it into, let's say I'm making homemade tomato sauce, and I put the blender in there, and zing, 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 and now it just pureed it for me. It's a beautiful thing. No mess, no fuss. I don't have to pour it out of the pot, and it just does it into the pot. Love that. It makes my life easier. But I love an immersion blender. You have the mixers, you have juicers. Juicers are great. You know, let's say you want some carrot juice, but the problem is that you got to clean up all the pulp and all of that. Heavy equipment includes your gas, electric, or steam operated appliances used for cooking, reheating, or holding. So usually you're going to see like your gas stove or your convection oven, your steam jacketed kettle, and they can be small where they're, you know, maybe a gallon or two, to a 40, 50, 60 gallon kettle. I make it, my stocks I do in a steam jacketed kettle. And usually I'm using about 150 pounds of bones when I'm making these stocks, and I'm getting about 40 gallons of stock out of it. So, you know, they're great to use. There's your stove tops. You can, it has a flat top, and that, you know what, if it's just a flat top that I can sear something on, that's called a flat top. And sometimes you'll see stoves that have both, like this one right here. It has the broiler and the grill. This one also has the oven underneath it. On top is your salamander. So let's say I want to put something in under the salamander, and what it is, it's the direct heat coming from top. So let's say I want to brown something on top. Let's say I got a twice baked potato and I put some cheese on top and I want it to melt and kind of brown. I'm going to put that on top. If you've ever had French onion soup, they always put it in the salamander because they put the cheese on top, and that makes your ooey gooey brown melted Gruyere cheese. It's so good. So you have that. So that's what a salamander's for. Here you have your deck oven. We have one of those in our pastry kitchen. Usually it's a hot oven. It's a dry oven. It's not a convection oven. We'll have where it has the hot, dry air circulating around, and it has a fan. Where the deck ovens, it's great for pastry because it stays at a constant temperature. Pizza, anything like that, breads, it's great to cook with. And then you have a wood burning oven. Those are great. When I was up in Atlanta, we had one of those that I would cook pizzas in. It was really, really nice. You have the tilt skillet right there. We have one in our kitchen. It's great to sear. Let's say I need a kind of a flat top, and let's say I have a party for 500 people and I need to sear some chicken. Guess what? That's what I'm going to use if I'm not going to grill it. The steam jacketed kettle, beautiful. I'm going to make stocks. Let's say I need to make marinara. Let's say I need to make 10 gallons of stock of marinara sauce. I'll make it in there. And the nice thing with the steam jacketed kettle, when you look at it, it doesn't, so if you look at kind of like this cup, right? If I put a pot on the stove, I have the heat from the bottom. The nice thing with the steam jacketed kettle, it has a second layer where the water, there's a steam that comes in between, so it's kind of a protected heat. You can't really burn nothing. It's really nice. And you can have a constant temperature and you're good. If I'm making Alfredo sauce and I'm worried about burning, I'm going to make it in my steam jacketed kettle. Okay, so you have the convection steamer. So steamers are great. You have the perforated pans. Perforated pans they have holes in them, so you know the liquid will drip through. You have the deep fryer. Here's a cryovac. We've got a cryovac machine over in Edgar's, and that's great for sous vide. So sous vide it's a cooking where it stays at a certain temperature, and you kind of vacuum pack it. You can take a piece of chicken and put some lemon, basil, oil, maybe a little ginger, and you vacuum pack it and you have that liquid kind of around it, and then you cook it in the sous vide at a very gentle, it's a gentle cooking, if you will. And you'll have it about 150, 180 degrees, and you put it in there for so many hours, it cooks it, and then what chefs will do is they'll pull it out, you'll put it in the refrigerator, let it set, and let's say tomorrow I'm on the line, it calls for chicken, somebody orders it, and I take it out of there and I sear it, and now I get my browning. It's already 3/4 of the way cooked, so now I'm searing it, getting my browning, it's beautiful, it's done. Instead of it taking me 15 minutes to cook on the line, now it just took me 5, you know. So it's really a great tool. A lot of places use it, some places don't. Buffet equipment, you have your specialized, so you have your insulated carriers. So the carriers are nice. You can it will either keep it cold. So if you put cold food in there, it will stay cold. If you put hot food in there, it will stay hot. It's a beautiful thing. And then you have your chafers, your chafing dishes. Those are for banquets and catering. If you ever do any of that, you've seen them before. And it has the sternos underneath heating it up. And they're great if you're going to have a lot of people over. Extinguishers, they have, you can read about this, you have the fire extinguishers, you have the canisters of foam, the dry chemicals, or the pressurized. And they have different classes. They have class A, B, C, and K. All right, so it's just kind of understanding those. You can look at that. Safety equipment, ventilation hoods. I was talking about the ventilation hood. And the equipment is very, very important, the hood, because if you're cooking in a kitchen, right, all the steam and the smoke and everything, you want something to suck it up, and that's what the ventilation hood does. It sucks up the smoke, so all of a sudden I'm not cooking in just a big cloud of smoke. You're always going to have first aid kits and protective gear. Usually your protective gear, you'll have your gloves, which is great. There's protective gear. There's safety gloves. It's a steel glove that if you're cutting, so on a slicer, you don't cut your hand, because people have cut their hands on slicers. They've lost fingers. Energy conservation. You got to keep your equipment clean and maintained. Observe good water uses and practices. Think about that. You're using so much heat. You're using water and electricity and gas, so you want to make sure that you're preserving this. You're not just keeping everything going when you're not using it. You want to preheat your equipment only when necessary. So if I'm going to go into the kitchen, the first thing I do, I know I'm going to use the oven. It may be in a half hour, but I'm going to turn it on when I walk in, because it needs to heat up. When I used to use the wood burning oven to make my pizzas, I would turn it on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't hot for an hour or two. So you got to turn it on and use it. You want to turn off your gas burners when not in use, but you can't blow them out, because what will happen is then you'll have the gas leak. So you got to be careful with that. Energy, when you're looking at your energy, you want to have the proper size pot. And again, it's just kind of using common sense in a kitchen. You know what, if I'm not going to make 2 quarts of sauce in a pot this big, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of knowing what you're going to use. And that's it. That's your proper tool. So I also put in here, if you look at your, on day 1, under that, I have the parts of the knife you can look at, okay? I have the handout of your classical steel cut sheet. And then, what's that one? The classical steel cut sheet is your, let's see. Oh, that tells you all those cuts. So I'm going to go through that and tell you the different cuts so that you'll have that. Because the bâtonnet, your julienne, your brunoise, we're going to start learning all of those different cuts. And then you have your homeworks right there. And you have your form, okay? So look at those, look at your parts of the knife, and look at your handout for the classical knife cut sheet, so you can start learning those dimensions. And I'm going to go through that once we start getting into the cutting. Okay. All right. That is chapter 5.